Welcome to the Ages of Rock podcast with your hosts Bill Algie, Dennis Talbot, and Alan Tate. We are three guys who have one thing in common, a love of rock and roll. Our goal is to talk about all things rock. We hope you find this show intriguing, funny, and occasionally highly opinionated. Enjoy! Welcome to the Ages of Rock podcast. This is episode number 99. We are almost at 100 episodes, folks. Thank you all so much for continuing to watch us and listen to us with our tomfoolery and our shenanigans. My name is Alan Tate. The gentleman with the white hair is Bill Algie, and the other goofball is Dennis Talbot.
It's gray.
Sure thing, Santa.
This is gray. That's why. Alan's is kind of I don't know.
You guys are haters.
Looks like a broom.
No, we don't hate you, Bill. We love you.
A dirty mop or something.
So anyway, this is episode 99 again, and this week we are going to talk about a fascinating documentary that we caught on Netflix called Netflix. It's a movie show about your neck.
It's like
Netflix.
A Pez dispenser.
Yeah. But anyway, it's a documentary called Hired Gun. Very well produced documentary, very entertaining. But before we get to that, real quick, I want to point out we have a friend of mine, Bob McNeely, wrote a review for let me pull it up here because I've already forgotten the name of it. The Kansas Live album, Left Overture Live and Beyond. He wrote a review for our website, so go to agesofrock.com. Check that review out. Bob did a fantastic job. And we're going to try to get him to write some more stuff, and we may recruit some of you too as well.
Yeah.
But anyway, enough of that. The movie is called Hired Gun. It is it's a documentary about musicians who have filled in for original members of bands, have ghosted guitar parts or drum parts or whatever on studio recordings and things like that. What's your first thought, Bill?
Great movie. My thought was, we back, one of our earlier episodes, we watched the movie The Wrecking Crew. And for me, this was the modern day version of The Wrecking Crew. These guys played on a whole bunch of records. They played on tons of records that people don't know about, like you said about ghosting. But they also end up getting jobs out of this stuff and gigs and different things. So I thought it was very cool. I was glued to the TV, and I'm going to watch it again because I really enjoyed it. So I would definitely watch it again.
Dennis.
Yeah, I had to basically crush this in because of time constraints. I actually watched it right before this episode, so it's all fresh in my head. But like Bill said, I would like to go back again and watch it. Kind of in a leisure pace, and I have to just come home from work and just jam it in. It also did, like you said, it did remind me somewhat of the Wrecking Crew situation. But there again, it was pretty funny too. With some of the stories were just hilarious. I mean, I know like Steve Lukather from Toto. That they were talking about writing that song for. Help me out because I just watched it. No. They were talking about writing the song for George Benson. Him and Jay Graydon.
Yeah.
He was talking about how to take a shit.
Oh, how to take a dump.
I mean, taking a deuce.
Dropping a deuce. Yeah.
It started with he found the lick originally, the chorus, and then he left for 30 minutes, and he came back and goes, "That's great. Now I got to go take a shit."
Yeah, and then he hit him some of this stuff, and he said he's all OCD, so he has to take all of his clothes off when he poops. It's like, I mean, it's just a funny story, but no, the movie itself, I liked it a lot. It was different than what I thought it was going to be, but I thoroughly enjoyed it, the whole thing. I mean, I think there was a little bit of. It wasn't quite because some of those guys I wouldn't actually consider hired hands or hired guns. Being
like who?
Well, one of the main ones was the drummer for Billy Joel,
Liberty DeVito.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Liberty. He came in very early. I mean, before really Billy Joel was you know what I'm saying? and he spent what 30. Well, then even made the
30 years. Yeah,
and said that he was. And the thing was too, you think of a hired gun as somebody who's not really famous, but they're just basically more studio type musicians. Brad Gillis, when he went in to play for Ozzy, he was already in Night Ranger fame at that point. He'd already done something with Night Ranger, filled that position. Yes, he was a hired gun, but he wasn't an unknown source that went in to be a hired gun. Now like when Jason Newsted went in to fill in Cliff Burton's thing, that was a different story. He was basically, what he said, one of 45 or 50 bass players.
It was something like that. Yeah, it was a lot.
Jason did come from a band with some notoriety because he was the bassist for Flotsam and Jetsam at the time.
That's true too. Okay, but Night Ranger was a fairly big thing. That's one thing. It just kind of struck me funny. I don't know. Maybe I'm being too, because I just watched it and it kind of threw it on me. But no, as a documentary itself, loved it. I mean, like I said, I'll watch it again. I'll probably watch it 2-3 times. Matter of fact, I'm gonna tell my mom and dad about it too, because they got Netflix and they're kind of interested in music. Well,
the comment about Liberty DeVito, though, I think that the hired gun piece for him was the fact that Billy Joel did everything, and those guys just came in and did the music based on what he wanted to do. Now, I guess there's a few times they changed up a couple things, but it was really all about Billy Joel,
right?
And honestly, it was interesting because throughout that, that they kept him in there that whole time. Right. Really, they kept the Billy Joel segment in there the whole time, and really by the end, I was kind of pissed.
Yeah, well, one of my notes just says Billy Joel is a dick.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say.
And the funny thing was, I'm not familiar enough with the Billy Joel band as I'm watching it at the very beginning, not knowing that he is out of the band now. I kept thinking he was, and then he was making some comments about Billy Joel, going, "Man, I hope Billy doesn't see this because he's going to be in trouble."
Well,
and it ends up, he treated them just like everybody else,
But he treated them as a hired gun.
Right.
He didn't treat them
but
as
after 30 years, my God, you don't just not tell some, that's the way I think
Billy does.
Well, he did it. He did it because the guy went and said, I'm having trouble making, the comment I think it was, is if you have any scraps left on the table. He wasn't being, if that's how it played out, you don't know. Right. So, but if that's how it played out, where he just went to him and said, look, how many times have we went to our bosses and said, look, over our lives, right?
Right.
Hey, I'm struggling here a little bit, and for him to shut him off. And it was, it's clear to me at that point that this is all about him, and it's the arrogance.
He didn't even get on the airplane. No,
they wouldn't even let him on the airplane. So
Billy might need to lay down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really shitty.
Well, that pretty much did it for me.
Yeah. But I mean, it was funny though, because of the people that were on this thing. You think of hired guns and everything, but I mean, some of these guys, like Kenny, my God, he's played for everybody.
Well, see, now I
reached out.
I don't really think that he was a hired gun for Mellencamp.
No, because it was at the very beginning of
that was the beginning of Mellencamp's career, and that's when as far as I know, he was on the first.
Right.
In the first touring thing. I don't think he played on the first Mellencamp album.
No, I don't think he came into American Fool.
Excuse me. Let's get this correct. It was John Cougar at the time, or Johnny Cougar.
Yeah.
So
I think he was on American Fool. I don't think he was on the record before that.
Correct. I believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I did
that was so early in the career. I can't see where. But there again, he's come along and played with other bands. I mean, he's like I said, he's probably one of the busiest guys around.
I have seen Kenny Aronoff
play with everybody.
With Mellencamp.
Yeah,
I saw him with Melissa Etheridge. I saw him with Chickenfoot. Oh my gosh, I couldn't think of the name.
Really? He was sitting in for Chad Smith?
He was sitting in for Chad Smith at not the Pass Rocklahoma that I went to, but the one I went to 2 years prior to that.
Huh, wow.
So that would have been in 2014, I believe.
Yeah, that dude is just uber talented because you can watch. I mean,
Yeah.
I follow him on Twitter, and it's always just because it's cool. Because if you follow him on Twitter, I mean, he is gone all the time. He's like, I'm going here to play with Kenny Loggins, and then I'm going, in LA, and then I'm flying from LA to go to Germany to play with, so and so in Germany, and then I'm leaving Germany, and they're not the same people. I don't know how he keeps it straight.
Well, one of the things that they pointed out was, he listens to that music and writes out the drum parts. I mean, he writes out his own sheet music.
Like another person that we know
this last concert I took my dad to, the John Fogerty, he was drumming for him.
Was he really?
Yeah, I was thinking that I'd seen him drum for Bob Seger, but that was incorrect. I saw Don Brewer drum with Bob Seger, and it was John Fogerty. So now,
but it was really cool, and
and I've seen him play for 2 or 3 more other pretty major artists, but I'm drawing a blank now.
Right.
Yeah, it's I just thought it was amazing. Those guys support for each other.
Oh yeah.
Right.
It was just, especially between Liberty and Kenny was just kind of, they have this really, big respect for each other. I thought it's really cool.
They've been in the business probably about the same amount of time, lengthwise. Their playing is very similar.
Yeah.
They're very, and they're not far apart from each other.
Yeah.
And they complement each other. But even when they were playing together, I kind of like the way they did those little segments when they had
the jam sessions.
The jam sessions. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, those two guys played together on that Derek St. Holmes.
Right.
Was that Look What the Doctor Ordered?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really cool.
I like Derek and Derek. I'm sure, like I said, that story was probably.
We'll get to that.
Yeah. But I mean, he's been. I mean.
Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah.
So, both of you guys mentioned that this was like a modern day Wrecking Crew. I went into watching it knowing nothing other than that it was about, like I said earlier, guys hired to come in and fill in for either someone who wasn't there anymore, who couldn't be there, or for whatever reason. But I did not personally make the Wrecking Crew connection, but to a point, I kind of agree with you.
Right.
I was going to say something else, and it's gone.
It slipped your mind.
Well, it's just because there were people that have played on, say, on albums or have come in and did parts and pieces. I mean, not all of them haven't, but I mean, they were talking. There was talk of. Well, Steve Lukather is one of the ones that was talking about that, saying that basically he's played on a ton of shit that's never been credited.
Right.
Just being a studio musician, and a lot of those guys were studio musicians. I mean, they, other than once they got their break and played with certain people or got hired on to be a hired gun per se, they were studio musicians. Because they're the A-list people, and that's what the people who hire these people for session, for actually touring, they're looking for the A-list people.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting because some of the people that were on here as hired guns, like you were talking about earlier, Dennis, I don't know that I really would consider them hired guns, but I guess they were. For example, Steve Vai. Steve Vai has his own stuff that he does, and
right.
He did, Surfing with the Alien and all that stuff. No, that was Joe Santriani. Never mind, forget that. Edit that out of the show. I got all, no, he has his own band.
We're gonna leave it in.
Stuff mixed up, but. I guess I just didn't
Steve
get. Steve
has played with other bigger bands, though. He's been.
He was a hired gun for David Lee Roth.
Right, and that was the first time I saw him. But I just, So I guess I just don't really think of him much as a hired gun, but he is. That's one of the people I didn't think would have considered in that hired gun kind of thing, but he obviously is.
Yeah.
I was. Go ahead, Alan. You were gonna segue into something.
I was just going to kind of start, I started at the beginning of the episode and kind of made a couple of notes here and there.
Yeah.
Please go through there.
The first note that kind of stood out to me, which talking about Rob Zombie, they interviewed Rob Zombie and Alice Cooper. as people who have brought in hired guns, Alice Cooper's had everybody in the world in his band, but only the A-listers.
Right.
Yeah, and that was cool interviews.
Yeah.
Both of them were cool.
But
Right.
Rob Zombie, one of his biggest hired guns is John Five.
Hmm.
Right.
But one of the things that Rob said that I thought was really cool, and I'm right there with him, is like he said, there were albums that came out, Kiss, for example. He had no clue that those tracks were not recorded by the original band members. When I was a kid, most of those, I didn't know Peter Criss wasn't on Dynasty. I didn't know Ace Frehley's got his solo replaced on Sweet Pain. Stuff like that. I wasn't astute enough. I wasn't a musician yet, so things like that never really stood out to me.
Right.
But that was the biggest thing that Rob said was he about not realizing.
I did like
how
his
many
comment,
of
though.
these shows or how many of these albums don't have the original members on there,
Right.
but they're credited as being on there anyway.
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah. What were you
One
gonna
thing
say,
Rob
Dennis?
did say that I thought was pretty interesting, and actually it made a lot of sense too, is the fact of that sometimes, you might get rid of a B player to get an A player, but then you find out the B player is actually the
can't
glue that
stand-
kept the band together
You can't
because
stand
they,
be
because of it.
around.
Right. I mean, they made him been the best player in the world, but their personality is the glue that kept the other people together.
Right.
And they get an A player in with an attitude because A stands for attitude.
They
then it
also
ends up being
stands for asshole.
right.
Yeah.
But I mean, and then it makes the mix completely poison. I mean, where everything it just ruins the whole stew. Using a cooking analogy, anyway.
That's the only cooking analogy you'll ever hear on this show.
Yeah, that's true.
Did you call it shit stew?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do soup.
Do soup. Oh.
Just
Okay.
came up-
Move on.
Okay.
Next note.
Jason Newsted, which is funny because they interviewed him. He flashed on there a couple of times, and he had a hat on that was kind of sideways and was wearing glasses. And until they popped his name up on the screen, I did not realize that was Jason Newsted. But
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I knew who it was.
He said a couple of things that really stood out to me. One was they were referring to Ghostbusters by Ray Parker Jr. And Jason said that it is more important to have a classic song than a number one song. And
That's what I wrote down.
I thought that was such a great observation. And Ray Parker Jr. said, that song never hit number one. No, I do not complain every time I have to perform it because you don't bitch because you've got a winning lottery ticket in your hand.
Exactly.
I
just thought the funny thing that they said Ivan Reitman says, I just need a song with the words Ghostbusters in it.
Right.
And here's $50,000. Can you write this? he goes, you mean I get to keep the money even if it's a shitty song? And they go, yeah, just try to write a song.
That was pretty funny.
That is funny though.
Yeah. Now my other Jason Newsted observation, which again his comment was dead on. He talked about, Cliff Burton was the bass player. It's like the one everybody worshipped. Randy Rhoads was the guitar player that everybody worshipped.
Hendrix of the bass. That's
Yeah,
what he said.
yeah, he called him the Hendrix of the bass. But he made a good point that it didn't matter who stepped in to fill those shoes, that they were going to be hated by the fans, and you had to stand your ground. He talked about how him and Brad had such common ground because two iconic performers
Try to fill those shoes.
Yeah, he said you can't fill these shoes, you just have to stand your ground.
No.
Yeah, but it's different. I think it's a little different in that aspect because those guys died and there wasn't any way you couldn't, you had to replace them.
It wasn't like Benny replacing Ace.
Right, which is different than
basically.
Right.
But there's going to be those diehards going, you can't replace Randy.
Well, but but those things go on. But I think that's a little bit different than whenever you have somebody that actually passes.
Right.
You got to replace them. So
exactly.
That's pretty interesting. I thought it was cool. I mean, I thought all of that. I thought his part was really neat. I mean, he had a lot of. I guess watching this. This is going to sound bad. And I don't mean it to sound the way it's going to sound. I think I gained a little more. I gained more respect for those guys because I always kind of thought that they were just musicians that played stuff and that was just kind of all they did. They're really smart guys that have a business sense for the most part,
Right.
that knows what they want to do. And, they are willing to do what it takes to get the next gig or to keep doing what they love to do. And I guess I never really, I don't know. I don't want to insult anybody, but I never really thought that.
Well,
I don't know. I just didn't think that was there. Does
this
that make sense? Or am I like just making?
it does make sense, and that segues nicely into one of the points that popped into my head. Jason Hook is the current guitar player for Five Finger Death Punch.
Right.
Yeah, who came from?
But I mean, he started out playing in Mandy Moore's band.
Yep.
He played acoustic guitar for her. Then he was out of that. He got the email. Thank you for your service. Then he was with Hillary Duff's outfit, and I guess that was pretty successful for a while. Bought a house, all of this good stuff, and then gets the thanks for your participation email.
Yeah.
But then, he and somebody else, I don't know if he came into Five Finger Death Punch or if he helped form it.
He was an Oz, or he went to
he was in Alice Cooper's band for a while.
Right.
But I mean, ultimately
making decent money.
Ultimately, he ended up leaving Alice Cooper's band to go to Five Finger Death Punch, which started out making less money.
Right.
But he used, what he learned with Mandy Moore and Hillary Duff to help get Five Finger Death Punch to the next level.
Right.
So a lot of their success can be attributed to what he learned from being in the pop acts, whether that be how you write your hook or how you do your business or maybe a little bit of both.
Right.
Yeah, because even the and I don't know the guy that they were talking to, but the guy with the long from Five Finger Death Punch with the beard, and is that the lead singer? I guess
it's the bass player.
It's the bass player. I don't know.
Yeah.
And he was talking about they still sell 500,000 copies a year. I mean, 5,000 copies per album, 500,000 copies per album.
Right.
That's
a goal.
That's pretty amazing, really, when you think about it. In this day and age, it's to be able to continue to do that is very amazing.
Going back to before we get too far out of the way, but going back to Jason Newsted real quick, my one thing I took away from that, I was really surprised at the fact that he finished that tour, played almost a year with him, making $500 a week.
Yeah, I wrote that down too.
I mean, seriously. I mean, once after that year and that tour was over with, and they were touring Masters of Puppets at that time.
Yeah.
So he went a year getting $500 a week.
But
Lars.
You know what? I think that had he not agreed to do that,
right?
His chance was gone forever.
Yeah.
There were
he had to prove himself.
Yeah,
and everything.
any bass player that stepped into that not only was going to catch shit from the fans, but they're going to catch shit from three guys who don't know how to deal with what just happened.
Well, they pay him $500 a week for that year. Then they go make their next album, and they turn his bass all the way down.
Well,
double screw.
Well, you can hear his bass in the 595 or 598 EP Garage Days revisited.
That's a good
one.
But anyway, I was just giving you credit. I thought that was fun.
Yeah.
Well, so I have a little confession to make too. So the Jason Hook thing.
Yeah.
Right.
So when I got to thinking about this, when Madison was little, we took Madison to see Backstreet Boys or NSYNC, and Mandy Moore opened.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I saw him.
Right.
And then Lisa went to see Hillary Duff with Madison. She saw him.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
I didn't go to that show. So it was really funny when he was talking about that.
Did she recognize that it was the same guy?
No, she didn't watch it with me. Oh, she
I
wouldn't recognize. She would.
I went
trust me. She didn't.
So I.
She wouldn't have put that together at all. But it was just. He was talking about like, oh yeah, I saw that. And she saw that. It was just kind of weird. We were talking about it tonight at dinner.
It is funny the things that you years down the line you realize. Oh yeah.
Yeah, you just don't know. You just don't know.
Alan, what else you got there? What else did you?
Derek St. Holmes. One of the biggest observations that he always made was they would go do a Ted Nugent concert or whatever, and he would sing, "Look what the doctor ordered," "Stranglehold," Dog Eat Dog, all of those songs that were Derek
I'm
St.
guilty
Holmes.
I am guilty as charged.
That he would, people after the show would be like, "Wow, man, I'm sorry that Ted's voice was shot, but man, you sounded great. You pulled them songs off well."
Yeah. Oh, I'm guilty as charged. I thought Ted sang everything he wrote.
So did I
as a kid.
Everybody. That's one of the hired gun. That's one of the biggest deceptions about the hired gun thing that I think.
Right.
And of course Ted Nugent does have a little bit of an attitude because after Stranglehold got as big as it did, he basically walked up to St. Holmes and said, "You will never ever sing another one of my hits. I will sing them all."
Yeah.
And that's probably when Exit Stage left, buddy.
After that,
and how many more hits? And how many more hits were there?
Did he have
I believe this many. Because The Great White Buffalo and Fred Bear are terrible songs. I said
terrible.
it.
There.
Yeah, I mean that's. But and Derek St. Holmes has got a great voice. I mean, I saw him with Whitford St. Holmes, and I had no idea. I didn't know who it was, but as soon as they came out there, I'm like, that looks like Derek St. Holmes, and
he actually
that looks like Brad Whitford. And I was like, what the hell?
He actually played the St. Meinrad Fest 3 years ago. They played on a Friday night, closed it out. I had to work and had to work the next morning, so I didn't go. But it was him, and it was called the On the Road Again band or Back on the Road band. But it's their band they do when they're not touring with Ted, and it's basically the bass player, drummer, and Derek from the Ted Nugent band that does this. And I wish I'd met the guy. I kicked myself in the ass for not going up there that night.
Well, I can tell you he sang a little bit of Ted. When I saw him with Whitford St. Holmes.
Oh, he did. He's singing up there too. But
he sang a little bit.
He's a super nice guy too. I mean, just absolute nice guy.
And then he was on the Kiss Cruise.
Yeah,
he sang with Paul on the Kiss Cruise.
All that.
He should have sang for Paul.
Ooh!
Shots fired.
Oh, no.
Across the bow, for sure.
I'll make a little. I mean, I don't know where you're at on your comments. You gonna say anything about the Steely Dan at all?
You jump right in, buddy. I mean, you guys have made some observations about this.
Oh, I didn't.
Oh no,
write
I think it's doing a great job. I mean, we're just kind of going through.
The Steely Dan thing when they were talking about when Jay Graydon talked about going in, and they were saying that Steely Dan's having this issue trying to get this lead in, and then they said, play something bluesy, and he actually sit there and played it. Dude, I got a chill. I mean, I love Steely Dan, and to see him play that lead, I mean, it was just note for note perfect. And it was funny to say, and it was funny that everybody who talked about Steely Dan was like going, man, if you get on a Steely Dan album, you're a bad motherfucker.
That's right. Yeah,
because everybody knew that they were. I mean, they got the A team. I mean, it was an A+ team, and because Steely Dan is not a band. Steely Dan was basically studio musicians, and when they went on tour,
they never went on tour.
Well, they did smaller.
Well, they did TV shows and stuff, but they never actually toured.
But I'm saying that they did some dates.
I'm sorry, I'm thinking Alan Parsons.
Yeah, Alan Parsons.
No,
Steely Dan.
Nothing to do with this show.
Now, Steely Dan has. I mean, I actually got a live DVD of them. But basically, that's what they did. They went out and they just hired a shit guy of the best musicians they could get their hands on, and it was Walter Egan and Donald Fagen.
Not Walter Egan.
God damn it,
Walter Becker.
Sorry, which he just passed away. Did I say Walter Egan?
You did.
I was a dumbass.
Well, we already knew that.
Proof.
Walter Becker, which he just passed away, and then then Donald Fagen. But anyway, I just thought that was funny. It was like when you're one bad mofo if you get on you get on Steely Dan.
Speaking of bad mofos, one of the things that Nita Strauss said that cracked me up was like, in Alice Cooper's band, everybody gets a chance to shine. Because when Alice isn't singing, he steps back and let whoever's doing the lead get up there and be in the spotlight or whatever. And she commented that guitarists are show-offs, and if they tell you any different, they're fucking liars.
They're liars.
But
That should be lead guitar players. Rhythm guitar players aren't like that.
Yeah.
We like to sit back and
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
do our thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there was, let's see, who else was on there? Well, our
Richard
buddy Eric-
Patrick was the guitar player for Nine Inch Nails, and he ended up when he left
He
Nine
come
Inch
off
Nails.
as a fucking dick.
He was a
I'm
dick.
sorry.
Well,
He is a
don't now. He came off as a dick, but who taught him
Filtered
to
it.
be a dick?
That's true. Trent Reznor.
Trent Reznor taught him to be a dick.
But he he treated those people bad, man.
The best
Filter
part
was not-
about it was that Phil Buckman,
Carl's Jr. guy.
yeah, Richard Patrick treated Phil Buckman, the bass player in Filter,
Right.
worse than Trent Reznor treated, Richard Patrick as a guitar player.
Right.
Yeah.
And Filters was not that big of a band anyway. It's like
They had that one song that I kind
One
of sort of
song.
remembered.
Right.
But the best part was the bass player was like, I don't want to put up with this shit anymore. And now he does voiceover work, and he's the
Carl Jr. guy.
Carl's Jr. and Hardy's voiceover guy.
Yeah, I thought that was good.
Yeah.
But yeah, that guy come off. They didn't put him in the highlight. He must have pissed somebody off. They said, you know what, we're gonna make this guy look good.
Well, you got to have a villain, right, in every movie.
Well, now that guy, I mean, he said, I don't care. This is about me. I like to keep the money.
Yeah.
Go tour the world and have some fun, but I'm keeping the fucking money.
You know who's he just read that Gene Simmons book.
That's funny.
Because I'm trying to get fired off Fox right now. I'm trying
Exactly
to get
right.
The only other real observation that I had on this, Eric Singer was on there, and everybody talked like he was going to be on there. He was on there for maybe a minute.
Oh, I know. I thought
And-
he was
and
going to be the main guy.
The biggest observation that I have about Eric Singer was his watch was so fucking big, I could hang it on my wall.
Oh, he's big into watches.
Yeah,
That's just
that watch was about that damn big around.
yeah.
Big as my grandfather clock.
Rudy was on there a lot, and Rudy's got
Rudy was on there.
Yeah.
Rudy though, but Rudy is a hired gun. I mean, he is
the ultimate hired gun.
He is the ultimate. But I tell you what, the guy's been in some damn good bands, and had to go
and
through a lot
Quiet
of
Riot and White Snake.
White Snake, yeah. But no, he's been, because even when they were talking about, he kind of calls Quiet Riot his band, but ask Chuck about that. Chuck's got a
Chuck
different
Wright.
answer for that. Chuck Wright's like going, no.
And my final observation about all of those hired guns, with the exception of Richard Patrick, all of those guys who they interviewed, and I say guys, there were girls, or there was a girl in there, but everybody that they interviewed as hired guns were grateful to get the gigs that they got. They did not take what they had for granted. And like Phil X said, you have always got to be on your A game, because if you mess up even once, there's somebody standing in the shadows that's ready to replace you, and the band will never miss a beat.
Well, that's very interesting, because I know that because I wrote a note. Liberty DeVito made a comment that most of those guys that are hired guns, if they're in a band for 3 years, or if they're playing for somebody for 3 years, that's phenomenal.
Yeah. And
for him to be playing for 30 years was just, unreal. And then to get let go the way he did. So yeah, it's amazing that those guys don't have bands. And I think it was Jason Hook that made a comment at one point where he said, I always really want to just have my own band and be a band and have 5 guys that were us. And he goes, but it just never worked out that way, because it just that wasn't in the cards. And that's kind of the way it works. I did like the comment Eric Singer about, the Catman makeup and all that kind of stuff. And, I knew that he was going to say that, because I'd seen that expert before. But it's just a fact. And that's the thing that everybody just needs to get over it. Just move on. He's not trying to be something. He's wearing some makeup, whatever. Who cares? For it.
He's been wearing that makeup since
he's wearing that makeup longer than Peter Criss.
He started out in 2001 and did it for a couple of years, and then he come back in 2004 or 2005, something like that. Well, he's been in it for that long, so
he's worn it longer than Peter Criss did.
He's been the the longest tenured drummer in Kiss.
Yeah.
Right.
So, not that has anything to do with hired. Well, I guess it does have to do everything with hired guns, but not the specific show.
So to me, I think the culmination of it. I don't know if we're getting to the end of this conversation, but it sounds like it's kind of winding
I have
around.
no more notes. So
here I got one. I wrote down a note.
That's 2 notes.
It's a note.
That's why I've been laughing. That's why I've been sitting here laughing. I was like, I had to write down a note, and I was like, going, I could do this. This will be funny as shit.
I really think that Alice Cooper really kind of, he's really cool. I mean, the more and more times I watch interviews with him, he is just really a cool guy.
That's why he's coming to my Thanksgiving dinner, bitch.
Gotcha. But he just gets it, and he's not arrogant about it. And
he wants you to succeed. Kip Winger.
He does, and I think that was
his bass player for a long time. And he's like going, Kip wanted to5 on his own. He's like, Kip, go for it. He got Eric Singer in there. Go play for Kiss. Please do this. Same way with the 5-finger pet. 5-finger pet punch.
That sounds like some kind of.
He doesn't. He wants you to succeed, and if you think you can do better than his, go for it.
Well, even if you don't do better, as long as you're happy.
I thought the best thing he said though was, when I go to a show, I look for those players and I say, "That's a great player. What's his name?" And I write it down.
It writes it down. It's like,
yeah.
So when I got an opening, I know who I'm calling.
Right.
And I think that's.
And I think that's what he said. He doesn't audition anybody.
No, because he doesn't need to. He only has A-list players because he goes out and he finds them and he goes, "Okay, you're my guy." Till you don't want to be my guy anymore.
I would think too, if they would say, like, if Nina said she couldn't do it, or she didn't want to do it, or somebody, he would go to the guys in the band. He would ask her or somebody else in the band and say,
"Who do we get?
Who would be the guy?" And they're not going to send some half-ass to him, because their reputation is going to be. I mean, his bass player was Chuck.
Chuck Garrett.
Chuck Garrett. He's been with them for years. I mean, and I'm sure he would just.
He's also the Alice Cooper Band musical director.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool.
I learned that on the Decibel Geek podcast.
There you go. But I think too, like you said, after a while, I mean, I'm sure he's written down a few names of stuff that he's seen, of shows that he's watched, and go, that guy would be good. But I'm sure he's got enough of his A-list players now. If he needed to replace somebody, it would be very easy to get a replacement, because he just asked somebody, who would you recommend? And he'd probably have a list of names, or a short list of names, to get. So,
yeah. Overall, though, I think it was a very well done show. I like the storyline, like the way
I did too. I really did.
Interacted with different people at different times, and it wasn't like just one segment about each person. They were kind of threaded throughout the whole thing, and I thought it was really good.
I think
and there really wasn't any.
Took 3 years of interviews and recordings to get that whole thing done, but it was consistent throughout.
Right.
Yeah, I just wonder what Billy Joel thinks about it looking back.
Well, Billy Joel, they asked Billy Joel to be interviewed and he declined.
You think?
So, yeah.
And he's got suicide
on
his hand, plus, But you know what, though? Even for, he was probably treated, I mean, he was with Billy Joel for many, many years and was let go in a really bad situation. But he still, like he said at the very end, he goes, if Billy would call me up today, I'd treat him as a friend, and he asked me to come back and play, I would say, sure.
You know why? Because it's a business.
It is a business.
Right.
And those
guys, it's all the music business, not the music friendship.
That's right.
They are a hired gun, and that's what it is. I mean, they're just, you're looking for your next thing.
What's your name on the marquee?
You
need to do the work to get it there.
Exactly. I thought it was really good. I'm going to add it to my list of great documentaries that I've seen and that I enjoy watching.
So for those of you,
and I want to watch it again. That's the thing.
And for those of you who want to watch it, if you have Netflix, it just came on Netflix. So, Hired Gun, check it out.
Yeah, check it out.
You fellas got anything else?
No, let's go. Let's end it on that. That was a good ending.
What?
You got to this week, next week. So.
Whatever you just said was totally shot. Say it again.
No, I said Bill's got a concert coming up this week.
No,
we'll talk about.
We'll talk about it next week.
Yeah. All right, folks. Visit us on agesofrock.com. Check us out on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. What's that? Stitcher Radio. Tried to get through that too fast and got tongue-tied. Till next week, peace out. Thanks for listening to the Ages of Rock podcast. If you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, and most importantly, tell all your friends. Remember, you're never too old to rock. Until the next episode, peace out, folks.